Today we're in Mount Olive and we're at the residence of Mr. Steve Fritz. And Steve, it's good to see you again. How you been?
I've been great, thanks.
That's good. Now I understand you're a rose breeder.
Rose breeder, right.
All right, now what does that mean?
Well, what that means is I actually create my own cultivars, the way you learned about it in high school biology, where you mix the pollen of the plants with the stamens and you breed them together like the birds and the bees. Collect up the seeds in the fall, plant them in the ground, and the next spring you have your own baby roses.
Now you told me that the rose is the flower of the United States.
Right, it's
That's
the
our
national
flower.
It's the national floral emblem of the United States, just like the eagle, bald eagle, is the national animal symbol of the United States, and everybody knows it. The rose is the national floral symbol of the United States.
There's 8 gazillion different kinds of roses.
Right.
And people for centuries have been breeding and trying different cultivars and mixing colors and.
Exactly. We can't go back far enough in history where the rose isn't mentioned. If we went back to 400 BC and Herodotus, the Greek historian.
I remember him.
He talks about a 100-petaled rose. If you go back 200 years before him to where they have scraps of the Greek writer Sappho, she's talking about God himself declaring the rose as the queen of the flower. So as far back as we can remember, Confucius on the Asian side was said to have had 600 scrolls in his library on how to grow roses.
Wow.
So roses have been connected with human culture since time immemorial.
Well, what makes a rose unique from other floral?
Well, they're so wonderfully magnificent. Look at this plant. And no other plant humans dedicate entire gardens just to that single variety. We have rose gardens, but we don't have petunia gardens. We don't have peony gardens.
No, thank goodness. But now, this is a shrub,
and
this is a rose shrub. How does this differ from stem roses? Besides the obvious, of course.
Well, a shrub rose is basically considered large, mounded, and many flowers.
Okay.
The individual rose that you give your girlfriend has that big one giant flower.
Right.
And to create that big one giant beautiful flower is one of the reasons why nobody grows roses today. Because what ended up happening was rose breeders worked and worked to create this one great flower, and nobody cared about these plants anymore. No one has giant plants in their yard. But what you might want to do is you might want to give your girlfriend one nice flower.
Right.
Okay? So the rose became a commodity like everything else did. There was a time where we made our own shirts and we made our own shoes and we made our own food and we grew our own flowers. But we don't do that anymore. You do one thing, you take care of this video stuff and you trade that ability for everything else you want. Somebody else makes your shirt, somebody else makes your shoes, and somebody else grows your roses. And when you want them for your wife, you go and get them from the store and you bring them to her and you hand them to her. She says, "Oh, thanks, Wayne, you're so wonderful."
Hey,
you didn't do anything,
well,
right?
You know,
Somebody else did all
sure they did. Yes.
So
I just spent the money.
So what ends up happening, and I got this here to show the viewers.
Yeah. All right, now, this is not a rose.
This is a rose.
This is a rose?
This is what we call a wild type rose.
Oh.
100,000 years ago when our ancestors were running around with skins, this is what they would have understood as a rose. You know, I don't know if you can smell it. It smells pretty good.
It smells pretty good. And a rose by any other name.
Some anthropologists speculate that agriculture itself may have come from roses. Really? Because when the men were out running down the gazelle with the spears, and of course women couldn't do it because they had a baby on their hip, but they were like every other animal that lives in the woods on the verge of starvation. The females that would have gone out and collected rose hips, which is the little rose apple that contains the rose seeds, to bring back for their babies to eat, and for the men when they didn't get that as a gazelle and came home hungry to eat. A rose hip contains more vitamin C than oranges.
Really?
So the females that would have collected these wild rose hips in the wild, they would have eaten the pulp around it, and they would throw the seeds outside of the hut of their cave. They would have noticed roses grew up there the next year. And by repeatedly doing that, again, cultural anthropologists have speculated, it was females who stumbled upon this idea that plants produce seeds that we can put in the ground and get that same thing the next year. And so all of agriculture may have come from the rose.
In fact, my guess is most people do not realize, and I hadn't even thought about it, that roses actually, like anything, comes from a seed.
Right.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. And creating rose seeds is sort of what I do, which is why we're here to talk about some of the seeds I've created and some of the plants I've grown. This is not a commercial variety, for example. This is a unique cultivar that exists nowhere in the world. If you go to Lowe's or somewhere like that and you buy a rose plant, you're buying one of 1,000 grafted or 1,000,000 grafted plants that are genetically identical.
Right.
This is a genetically unique individual.
There's no, this is the one of a kind.
The only specimen that
Find
exists
this
in the
anywhere
world.
else in the world.
Right. But now what?
That's beautiful right there. Let me get that up kind of close to the old camera there. Can you get a shot of that? Isn't that beautiful?
Well, let me tell you what happened.
This bud right here. Let me ask you that.
Uh-huh.
This bud will bloom out to these. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
In spite of the fact it's of a different color.
So what ends up happening is in Europe,
Yeah.
these roses are collected and grown by the Greeks, by the Romans, and this type of rose is developed. It's like a cabbage rose. It's a flat rose. They're either in pinks or whites. And when Shakespeare said a rose by any other name would smell so sweet, he had never seen a red rose.
Oh.
Shakespeare had never seen a true yellow rose. He had only seen pinks and whites. The War of the Roses between the Lancasters and the Yorks.
Right.
One, they said, had a red rose, which was really a dark pink, and the other was a white rose.
White rose, yes.
When the English explorers began to go around, the Europeans began to go around to Asia in the 17 and 1800s, they came back with tales of roses that were true yellows and true oranges.
Wow.
European roses were bloomed only in the springtime, just like azaleas, just like dandelions. They bloomed in the spring, they had great fragrance, and then you had to wait till next spring to see any more of them. When the explorers came back, they talked about Asian roses that were ever blooming. So the Europeans were real anxious to get some. And when they brought them back, they looked more like this. They looked more like what we understand as a rose today, that triangular shape.
Right.
And the Europeans loved it. So they bred the Asian roses with the European roses to get the modern roses we know it today. The problem with that was the European roses were resistant to European diseases. Asian roses were resistant to Asian diseases. The modern crossbred cultivar roses are not resistant to any diseases. So when you plant these in your yard, they look real good on the package,
right?
But after a year or two, they start to decline, and you mow them down with your lawnmower because you don't want to spray them with fungicides and insecticides. That is what is required to have modern roses grow today.
Okay.
So when I came here, bought this house, planted roses like everybody else, and my roses declined, I said, you know what, maybe I can do something about that. So I started hybridizing roses to create disease-resistant varieties so that you and I can grow these kinds of roses without having to spray with chemicals. So that's my goal, that's my aim. And after 25 years, I'm about halfway there.
Are you halfway there?
So, yeah.
After 25 years?
Yeah, because there's so many different variants. Because you want this nice shape. I have roses that are disease-free right now,
really?
Okay? But you wouldn't grow them because the flower's not pretty enough or the rose is too big and lax. So for a rose to be disease-free and also worth growing, it has to have plenty of flowers of the shape you want with fragrance. There's so many things that come into it.
This is about 8 feet tall, roughly, give or take a foot.
Would have been taller if it didn't flop over because it's so big.
Yeah. How long has this been? How old is this shrub?
When I create a rose, I give it a number. Most of them don't have names. A couple of them do.
Okay.
This one is 00-11, which means it was the 11th baby rose I potted in the year 2000.
This came from a single
seed.
Seed.
Right.
This whole
plant right here.
one seed.
One seed.
And when now?
The year 2000. Okay.
So
this rose is 17 years old.
Yeah.
Now I have some in the back that we'll go to that are new seedlings this year.
Okay.
But if we want to just walk a little bit, I'll show you a couple roses over here that are interesting. Some are commercial varieties that you could go and buy or order online, and some are varieties that I've bred myself.
All right, let's take a walk around.
Okay, can we go this way? Now this rose on the other side of the driveway is always a fan favorite. You see how dark and velvety it is?
That's a beautiful rich red.
Yeah. Now I did not breed this. This is a commercial variety. It's called Black Magic.
Okay.
Now if you were to take a picture of this rose, it almost looks artificial.
It almost does.
It's so velvety. And if you smell it, it has no scent. So it's a wonderful, beautiful, velvety flower, but it has no scent and it has to be sprayed. Okay?
So this is only there for the beauty.
This is like a florist rose. You cut this, you bring it to your wife.
Oh, okay.
And she says, Wayne, you're so thoughtful, so wonderful. Yeah. because you don't care about the plant. You're not there to grow the plant. You're there to give her a flower for Mother's Day or whatever it is, and you're done. You've checked that block. And,
check that block
right.
and move on.
Now this rose here on the other side of the driveway
Yes.
is also a commercial variety.
Yes.
It's pink. Let's see about this guy. But if you smell it,
yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Nice
see,
fragrance.
this rose has tremendous fragrance.
Yes.
Now this rose will grow to be about 11 feet tall if you let it.
All right.
It doesn't have that velvety texture, but it has its own unique qualities. And this rose also needs a little bit of spraying, not as much as that one.
Now the trunk. How old is this shrub? Because the trunk is rather thick on this. Although there's
This rose is a commercial variety, and I bought it about 5 years ago.
really.
So this has been in this spot about 5 years.
So you're supposed to cut roses back each year. How far back do you cut these?
If you cut a rose back low, you'll get fewer flowers, but they'll be bigger. If you let it grow taller, you'll get many more flowers, but they'll be smaller.
Uh-huh.
And since I want to breed roses, I usually go for as many blooms as possible.
Okay. So
Now,
you let it go.
So I let it grow.
Yeah.
Now, as we walk through the yard, you're going to notice some of these things right here. These little bags are where I've actually hybridized this rose this year. And inside this bag, it'll grow like a little apple. And with luck, in the fall, I'll collect rose seeds from this plant to grow for next year. So seeds are developing right in there.
So do these seeds come in are they in a pod? Are they on a
Yeah, they
flower?
actually look like a little rose apple. And if we walk around here, I might be able to find you
Okay.
one.
We're looking for a rose apple here.
I think I saw one up on this plant earlier.
All right.
I should have,
I want to give some credit to Pat Garner, who's following us with a camera.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, I was noticing these shrubs behind us here.
uh-huh,
These are on your ditch bank here. This is the cultivar that you have in the mud
right,
here.
yeah.
These are beautiful. What is this?
This is a wild type rose.
Are they Irish?
No, it's not.
I was just wondering.
And it's not yellow, so
I love
it's not
that
from
song.
Texas. Yeah, this is a cultivar that you can buy. The name is escaping me right now. But this is also a shrub rose. It grows big, it's mounding, and it gets lots of flowers.
They're beautiful. And again, the trunk rather large on these.
Right.
When you cut these back, you cut them to what, a foot or two? A couple feet off the ground?
Probably about right to here.
Okay, so up to about 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah, most of my roses, as a rule of thumb, I cut about chest high.
About chest high.
Now, some of them, like the ones we were standing in front of to begin with, I'll let them grow a little bit higher than that.
Okay.
This is one of the roses that I've bred myself here, this orange one.
Okay. This one right here.
Yep. It has a unique color.
Nick and Agnes.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to take a picture of this, but if you grow your own rose, you get the right to name it. You could call this rose anything you want.
Is that right?
So you could name it after your wife, you could name it after your dog. This rose was named after my in-laws
Oh, is that right? Nick and Agnes.
because my mother-in-law used to dye her hair and it always came out sort of this color.
Is that right?
And my father-in-law was a gambler and he used to love to play the number 11-7.
Oh, there you go.
And this happened to be very coincidentally a rose that I labeled 11-7 because it was the 7th rose I potted in the year 2011. So this rose was a seedling in 2011. But it's a very interesting color.
So it's 6 years old
6 years old.
and seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah.
Roses require a lot of sun, do they not?
The general recommendation is 6 hours of direct sun a day.
6 hours of direct sun.
And if you're going to have partial shade, give them sun in the morning and let them be shaded in the afternoon when the sun is real hot.
Okay.
And that way the colors will be more vibrant.
Okay.
But the rose is named after all kinds of people. This is a brand new commercial cultivar I bought this year. It's called Pope John Paul II. It's a
Okay.
white rose.
It is a white rose. Gosh, that is beautiful.
Yep. This one here is named after Neil Diamond.
Is it Crackling Rosie or? Oh, that's the name of it, Neil Diamond?
Neil Diamond, yeah.
How about that?
And you can smell this. You can smell it's a striped rose.
Oh yeah. What do they call that? Variegated?
Variegated, yeah.
I just guessed at that.
Well, you're good. You're a good guesser. Now this, if we
This is Neil Diamond.
if we look up here, we can begin to get an idea of rose diseases.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm here all about. Wait a minute. What is this? This is beautiful here.
Yeah, that's a rose called Heart of Gold. That's one of those florist varieties like you'd want to get and buy for your mother on Mother's Day.
Yes.
It's a perfect rose. This is the kind of rose what I was telling you about. People don't grow these roses. They don't grow them because they need spraying from disease. Okay. Because they've been developed by the breeders for just this beautiful flower. The breeders have neglected the plant's health itself.
So this actually takes work?
Well, you know.
Well, that's what I would call it.
If you love what you're doing, it's not work.
It's not work. That's true. You never
Like
work
you right
again.
now, you're not working.
No, I'm not working. This is not work. Okay.
So take these two roses now.
All right.
They're both yellow.
Yes, they are. Are they from Texas? We covered that, didn't we?
Can you see the spots here? I don't know if you can get the spots on camera.
Oh, yeah. Black spot.
Black spot, right, exactly. This is a rose disease. What happens when a rose gets black spots, a fungal disease, the leaves will turn yellow like this and they'll fall right off. Just like that. And the rose, because the leaf is the food manufacturing center of the plant, once the leaves fall off, the plant can't manufacture its own food and the plant will begin to die.
So, how do you, well, you can't prevent this.
You prevent it by spraying. Now this plant here is in the same spot getting identical care with this one. It's a different variety. This one has no black spot.
This one has black spot and that one doesn't, but they're next to each other.
They're next to each other.
But
so
black
this,
spot transfers from plant to plant.
So what this tells me is this cultivar is much more highly susceptible to the disease than this one. So if I'm breeding for disease resistance, I want to breed with this one and not this one.
And not this one.
So, however, this rose has a lot of fragrance. This rose has virtually no fragrance. So now if I want fragrance, I want to use this one. If I want disease resistance, I want to use this one. And if you breed the two together, you hope you get the good qualities of one and the other together.
But you may not.
And we usually don't.
You don't?
Right. You know, when Abraham Lincoln's parents had 6 kids, one was Abraham Lincoln, the other 5 were
not.
misfits.
That's true.
So.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Lincoln. So, when did you actually get an interest in growing roses? When did it start
Probably
for
about
you?
1980.
Really?
I bought this house, actually it was about 1989. I bought this house in 89, grew some roses, some azaleas, some petunias, and the roses declined. And I went to the nursery and I said, well, you know, what's up with that? And they told me about the spraying and all that, and I thought that was sort of disgusting.
Yeah, disgusting. Yeah.
But since I was a young parent with no money, I figured I could hybridize roses and grow them in little pots. That wasn't too expensive.
That's right.
And I had a big yard to plant them in, and I just started doing it for, you know, to try to develop a disease-free rose. And it sort of gets a hold of you, like any other vice.
Yeah.
You know, I don't recommend rose growing to people. It's too much work for most people. They don't want to spray.
Well, there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Do you spray each and every rose
Every
shrub?
week.
Every week?
Every week, once a week.
There's a lot of work involved.
It's because all it is preventative. All you can do is prevent the disease. Once that black spot gets into the leaf, you can't cure it. That leaf is going to die.
It's going to die.
By putting on a fungicidal spray, you can prevent that leaf from getting black spot. Okay, so all you can do is prevent it. You can't cure it. Now, if we come back here, I'll show you another disease.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this now. Once the black spot gets on the leaf, you know it's going to die. If it dies and falls off, you need to get that up right away, right? You can't leave it under the shrub.
Well, I have a bit of a conundrum.
What's your
Because I'm
conundrum?
trying to breed for rose disease resistance, I need my roses to be exposed to the disease.
Ah,
you see?
Otherwise, how do you know?
Right, so normally when I spray, I'm spraying at either half strength or I'm not spraying as religiously as I should, because I want the roses to grow big enough to produce lots of flowers to breed, but I also want to be able to tell which ones get the disease and which ones don't.
Gotcha.
So this is a different disease. I don't know if you can see this one.
Looks like they're dying.
It's called powdery mildew.
Oh, yeah.
You see that?
Sure.
It almost looks like baby powder.
It does look like baby powder.
And it makes the leaves deformed and it makes the flowers deformed.
And the leaves are all white powdery.
Right.
Powdery mildew, yeah.
Now the interesting thing about this, if you look at it, is it gets virtually no black spot.
Oh.
One of the things that rose breeders have discovered is that cultivars that are very resistant to black spot are susceptible to powdery mildew.
Okay.
And if they get black spot, they're resistant to powdery mildew. So they're the two major rose diseases, and it's very hard to get resistance to both diseases in a single plant. And this one gets powdery mildew, doesn't get black spot. That one that we looked at got black spot, doesn't get powdery mildew.
And there the twain shall meet.
And that's where we are.
Okay, well I see your bag here.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Well, I'd like to show you how to breed roses if you want to do that.
Well, sure. Let's take a look at that.
All right. So I guess what I'd like to show you is how I actually go about rose breeding.
Okay.
So we'll select a rose cultivar. You remember that big giant shrub rose we started off with?
Sure.
I got some pollen from that. I'm going to put this down.
Some pollen.
And what that meant was I took a flower.
Mm-hmm.
I removed all the petals.
Oh my goodness. On purpose.
On purpose. And in the center there, you're going to see the male and female portions of the plant.
Is that right?
The center portion are little tubes that go down into here, and those are called the pestils.
Right.
Around the edges are the yellow ones which contain the pollen. They're called the stamens.
Right. Gotcha.
So right now this has no active pollen on it. You can't see any.
Let's show the pestle a little better here. See,
Okay.
that's a pestle right there, and the stamen looks like.
Right. I'm going to show you one that I picked yesterday.
Okay.
Okay. This one is one I picked yesterday, and if you rub it on your fingers there, and I don't know if you need to get closer, just put a little bit between your fingers.
Okay.
Here, I'll show you. You can actually see maybe a little bit. Well, you can see it better in the
I see
cup.
little seeds.
It's a little yellow powder.
Okay.
That's the male portion.
Okay.
Okay, that's the pollen.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so you can put it in there.
Okay, good.
Now on this cup, you see I have marked 0010.
0010. What is that?
That's one of the roses from out front that we were standing in front of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we were by 11.
And right next to it was a sister plant 10. They both came from the same seed, and they both looked very similar.
Okay.
So I got to mark this because once you get all the petals off, all roses look the same. You see, if I just handed you that, you wouldn't know which rose that was.
I wouldn't know what it was. No.
So now I mark this, so when I get the pollen the following day, I let it dry out, get the pollen the following day, I know what rose I'm breeding with.
Is this the same pollen with which we sneeze often?
Yes.
Same stuff.
This is in the air.
Okay.
And if you're allergic to it, you're in trouble, especially back here.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to breed this plant.
This plant.
This plant.
This plant.
Now the reason it's got to be this plant is because all these flowers are very open.
Yes.
A bee may have come in and pollinated that already.
Oh.
So if this develops seeds, I can't be sure it's the rose I wanted to breed with it. This flower is closed.
Yes, it is.
We're going to peel the petals off of this flower, we're going to put this pollen on it, and we're going to breed this rose with the rose that was out front. Okay?
Okay. Very good.
So what I have to do is, very gently, I peel the petals off. This is also one of my cultivars. And you can see the female and male portions in there.
Right.
And step number 2 is...
Step number 2.
I'm going to put on my glasses because I used to be able to see this stuff without glasses, but I can't anymore.
Things happen.
Now you see all those male portions there? That's where all the pollen is. I got to take it all off.
Some tweezers. You're taking all the male portion off.
Otherwise, this plant might pollinate itself, which we don't want.
Now, those are the little yellow part. Those are the stamen.
Right. Those are the stamens. That's where the pollen comes from.
Uh-huh.
And that's where the bees go on. They get the pollen from this plant, they land on another plant, and they pollinate the other plant with this plant's pollen.
Got it.
But we don't want this plant's pollen to be around because we don't want this plant to pollinate itself, which can happen. So now this plant has only the female portions left.
Okay, I got it.
We're going to take that pollen that we just looked at a minute ago, and we're going to rub it on there.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you can see, there's a little yellow dust on there.
So this is the same thing that the bee would do.
Same exact thing the bee would do, or apple growers do, or researchers in any field do. Okay?
All right.
And then I take a little bag that I've made myself.
Yes.
And I write the names of the 2 plants on there. This plant is 7-88. It was the 88th plant I potted in 2007.
Okay.
Times 0010, which was this pollen.
Right.
And I put that on both sides. I put this bag on top of this so it marks where we've fertilized our hip.
Now, what's going to happen here? We have the pollen from two different rose shrubs coming together, and they're going to create what?
If the fertilization is successful, and it often isn't because roses are a highly inbred plant.
Okay.
What will happen is seeds will begin to grow in there.
Okay.
Where the flower was, beneath it, will begin to swell up like a little apple. And that's what I was telling you before about rose seed hips, is what they call them. They're rose seed pods. They look like this. This is a rose seed pod.
That is a rose seed pod.
Right.
So this has rose seeds in it.
Right. It used to be a rose. It used to be a rose. A bee or through some other fashion fertilized it.
Right.
The petals fell off.
Okay.
Underneath the petals, in here, are the ovaries of the rose. It actually swelled up and became this.
Okay.
And if we were to cut that open right now, we would see rose seeds in there.
So these rose seeds inside this pod are ready.
Are ready to go.
These are ready to go.
Right.
You could plant these and...
What I do in September,
yes.
Okay, we breed them in the spring.
Right.
In September, I go around, collect all these bags. So in some of these bags, there'll be nothing. The fertilization didn't take. In about half the bags, I'll get this. I then take the seeds out.
Take the seeds out.
And I plant them.
Just like you would anything?
Just like you would anything else.
In a seed pot.
And I write the name that I had written on that bag. I write that here. So should this germinate, I'll know who the parents are.
Okay.
And here is one that's germinating right now. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
This is what a baby rose looks like. And these are
isn't
the
that
parents,
cute?
right there.
And those are the parents. I know they're proud. That's that's. How about that?
Okay. That's a baby rose.
Baby rose. How old is that?
That rose is about 3 weeks old.
Oh. Oh, I think it needs changing.
And then,
no. Okay.
And then when it gets bigger,
yes,
and it outgrows that, I put it into these pots.
Right.
Okay. You can see how.
Very nice.
Now this rose is probably about 2 months old.
Okay.
Here's another one. See how red and velvety that one is?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that looks like the one up by the driveway there.
Right.
All right. What kind of rose is this?
Well, this rose is I have it numbered.
Okay.
So this rose would be 17-81. It was the 81st rose I potted in the year 2017. Okay, now I have the two parents recorded in a book in the house. I don't have it recorded here, so I'm not sure what the parents are.
That's fine.
But what I have to do is I create anywhere from 100 to 200 baby roses every year.
Tell me about this.
That's clematis. It's a vine.
Oh,
it's not a rose.
That's not a rose.
Roses.
I was thinking that looks a lot like clematis there.
That's what it is. Roses do not come in blue. If you ever breed a blue rose, you'll be a millionaire. Okay.
Okay, I'll work on that.
So that I throw in some of this. This is a variety called Jack Monty in among the roses because this is a color you're virtually never going to see in roses. So I throw some of this with there.
Very little blue in any kind of plant.
It's true. Yeah.
In anything.
Right.
Okay.
Now you know about knockout roses. There was a guy by the name of William Radler. He's a rose breeder like me from Wisconsin. He bred in his backyard and he developed this rose called Knockout, which is truly disease-free. You don't have to spray it. You can put it in your yard like an azalea and it'll grow. It doesn't have those great florist rose shape. It doesn't have any scent, but it's a great step forward in rose breeding because it's disease-free. So some of these roses, a good number of these roses back here are offspring of Knockout, including these right here. Knockout is the parent of these roses right here. And these roses are very disease-free. You don't see any powdery mildew. You don't see any black spot on them. And the roses are an interesting color. So
yes.
Knockout is one of the roses that I'm using in the breeding program. It's so disease-free it can't be ignored. I'm going to show you some roses in the back there. Again, roses have different problems. I have a rose that'll grow 14 feet tall and 14 feet wide, but hardly get any flowers on it.
Whoa.
So who's going to want that in their yard?
Somebody would want that.
But one of the ways you can fight diseases is by creating a rose that's so vigorous, even if it gets a little disease, it'll grow through it. Oh. Okay, so a robust plant is good to have in the breeding program. But that one's so robust, you know, it has too much plant and not enough flower.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is a white rose. White is actually the least popular flower color.
Really?
When men buy roses, they often buy red. Men love red, who knows why?
Yeah,
the color of blood, maybe.
That makes sense.
But if you ask women, women tend to have, their favorite colors tend to be yellows or purples. They're not real big on red, but they like getting the flowers, so they say thanks to the guys who give it to them.
Okay.
But
white's beautiful.
Yeah, I think white's great too.
Okay.
But it's an unpopular color. White also gets a lot of attraction from insects. For some reason, whites are very insect prone. But again, you know, we want to have a variety of colors, so white is in my breeding scheme.
Are there roses that do not have thorns?
No, I don't know of any. I bred one rose, I was telling you about it earlier, that just in my breeding program happened to be produced without roses.
Oh, okay.
I mean, without thorns. And I was shocked by it, and I kept looking for them, and it never produced a single thorn. Unfortunately, the flowers themselves weren't that attractive. It didn't have that much fragrance, so it didn't have the other qualities I would need to keep it in the breeding program.
Okay.
But it was completely happenstantial. But you can look back here. Some of the roses have lots and lots of flowers, lots and lots of buds.
Yes,
you can
they
see
have lots of buds.
how many flowers these are going to have in a week. This rose here.
And it takes roughly a week once
you get to a bud stage, it'll get open in about a week and stay open for about another 4 or 5 days, and then it'll
dry up.
Dry up. Okay. Now, can you smell that yellow and pink rose on top there?
Let's find the yellow and pink rose over here.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can smell that.
To me, that smells like perfumed baby powder.
That Cupid got me again. That rascal. Anyway, smells like what?
To me, it smells like baby powder.
Baby powder.
I don't know what...
Johnson & Johnson, right there. That's beautiful.
Now, one of the things you discover when you grow roses that you might not realize is people sense things differently. I've had people smell that rose and say it was the most wonderful in the world. I've had other people smell it and say they couldn't smell anything. Or vice versa. Someone will come here, smell a flower that I think is hardly fragrant at all, and they'll say it's wonderful. I had somebody look at a pink rose and say, this rose is so incredibly vibrant. And every time she came here, she pointed out the rose and said this rose was vibrant. To me, it looked like any other pink. So what you learn by hanging around flowers like roses all the time is that people's actual sensing ability varies a little bit from person to person, that you wouldn't know if you weren't in these circumstances all the time.
Okay.
So this rose back here is what I was telling you about on the other side of the fence. It's huge. It has some yellow flowers on it. It's actually flopped over. You got to be careful there.
Yes. Oh, man. Okay.
But this rose will get about 12 feet tall and 14 feet wide.
This one
This one right here.
And it'll be full of roses.
And it has these roses on it, but to me it doesn't have enough roses to justify its size.
Oh, well.
You smell
something? It's an unusual, very unusual fragrance.
I've had some people tell me they'll smell certain roses and say they don't even like the fragrance, because the mixture of different rose oils that creates fragrance affects people differently.
It has a tartness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't want to eat it, but I mean it's...
So you can see how big this rose is for how few flowers it has?
Yes.
Now if we go here on the other side, we're going to see a rose that's small but has thousands of flowers on it.
Okay. So the smaller the shrub, the more flowers, but the smaller the flowers. The bigger the shrub, the bigger the flowers, but the fewer the flowers.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
Right. Nothing's an absolute.
Yes.
You know, look at the amount of buds on this rose.
This has a lot of roses on it.
Yeah.
And they're smaller.
And they're smaller.
But look at the number of buds.
Right. And can you see this one back here?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's kind of a pink sort of thing.
Right. Now today's day and age, modern home growing, if you drive up and down the street and look at what people have growing in front of their houses, a modern fad, and I don't know where it came from, tends to be those little ice cream scoop shrubs in front of everybody's house, those little mounds of shrubs. Yeah. And we tend to have small suburban lots with small plants on it.
Right.
And most people don't have room for big plants.
Right.
And they don't really want to take care of these big plants.
Right.
So going for something smaller, more rounded, with a lot of flowers is really what people are looking for. Now, I've made no attempt to sell these roses or to try to please you or the neighbors or anybody else, because I really wanted to focus on what I wanted to do.
Well, this is strictly your hobby here.
Strictly mine.
I got you.
But if I wanted to commercially market some of these roses, the plants that would appeal to rose retailers would be the ones that stayed smaller with more flowers.
Okay.
Not the big, huge ones. Even if they created nice flowers, again, people aren't looking for 12-foot tall shrubs.
You can actually, when you're creating a rose shrub, you can control through breeding the actual size.
Right. You can attempt to control. Generally speaking, the larger the parents, the larger the offspring will be. But roses have been so highly inbred, you never are quite sure exactly what you're going to get. So
back in the woods there, I think I see, is that some of your rose work back there that actually survived?
Yeah, well, that's an actual commercial cultivar. It's not mine.
Oh, okay.
But I put some out in the woods sometimes and neglect them, because I want them to be in the harshest conditions, and if they will survive, I'll then go back there and breed with them and say, okay, these have the qualities I want.
These are hardy,
Right.
How hardy are roses, by the way?
Roses that get black spot will die within about 3 years, and it doesn't matter what you do. People don't want to spray the roses, so what they'll do is they'll throw a little extra water on them, throw a little extra fertilizer on them. It's not going to do any good. Yeah. It's like saying, you got polio or something, and I'm going to give you orange juice. It's not going to address the problem.
So once they get the black spot, it's over.
So most roses that you buy commercially, if you don't spray them, they will die. And there's nothing you can do about it.
You got to spray them.
Unless they're knockout. If they're knockout roses, they will grow without spraying. Some cultivars, even though they're commercial, will last longer than others. Some are more disease resistant than others, but as a rule of thumb, if you go to Roses or Lowe's and you buy any of those potted plants other than knockout, within 3 years you're going to be mowing them down. Drive up and down the street and look. You don't see people growing roses.
That's true. That's true.
They just don't exist.
Steve Fritz is a rose entrepreneur, grower.
Yeah. Enthusiast. But I don't recommend them to you because they're a lot of work.
They're a lot of work. That's
unless I'm successful. But I got to leave this to somebody else, because as you can see, the sun rises for the last time for everybody.
Eventually it does.
And I'm not there yet. So what I've been trying to do is to find maybe a college or a university. This is really a university project, to take this over.
I see.
To create a rose teaching garden. I've been talking to the people at the University of Mount Olive and Wayne Community College to create a rose teaching garden where they are, and to continue the research and the breeding efforts to create, the ideal rose.
Very good. Well, I wish you luck with that, and I thank you for letting us on in your rose garden.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Steve Frick. There you go.